Start with our sponsors, and hopefully the other guys will pick on and jump on. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Levish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Israel David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Persel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Peres, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov. A month of learning sponsored by Dov Bodlander in memory of his father, Tzvi ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother, Bela Devasha bas Harav Dov Bear, his father-in-law, Yehuda Tzvi ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law, Alta Chaya bas Avram Yosef. Also by Malin Haran Haller, in memory of his father, Avram ben Ze'ev. A week of learning by Michael and Sharon Glass, in memory of his mother, Rivka Yitta bas Yitzchak Kohen. Also a week of learning by Carol Sanborn and family in honor of Josh's special birthday. And that is it for today. May the neshamas have an aliyah, kranker afia velti yashir shayim mataliyah, and lechol b'nei Yisrael a good gebenched yar.
Hey.
Okay, all right. Today we are on, right?
Lamed Zayin. Lamed Zayin.
Gotta keep my place, because I try to go ahead a bit for preparation. Okay, Lamed Zayin. Right?
Right.
Hamid Aleph.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So we were dealing with a situation, okay, just quickly reviewing, okay, about Rabbi Yehuda's statement versus Ayu's version of the Mishnah, which was acceptable, okay, whether Rabbi Yehuda rejected the idea of Breira. That was another aspect. And then we got into, on the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Beis, we got into the following. Just picking up there real quickly. Lo Salkadatach, Daha Shma'inam Le Rabbi Yehuda, the Litle Breira. So that was our question. Does Rabbi Yehuda reject the concept of Breira? Right? Ditnan, as we're taught, Halokeach Yayin Mibein Hakutim, one who purchased wine, we said, from among the Kutaim, right? Omer Shnei Lugin Shani Atid Lahafrish, who said for 2 lug of wine, and this wine we said was was a question of it not having been tithed yet, okay? Shani atid lehafrish, that I will in the future, I'll separate, in other words, declare as truma. Harei hein truma, they will be truma. Asara, 10 lugin, maaser rishon, that will be designated to be the first tithe, maaser rishon. Tisha, 9 lugin, maaser sheni, second, right? And the second maaser sheni can be redeemed. Umichal, excuse me, he redeems it. V'shotem miyad divrei Rabbi Meir, and he drinks it then immediately after he redeems it, according to Rabbi Meir. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, v'Rabbi Yossi, v'Rabbi Shimon, Osrin. And this is where we finished yesterday, right? That Rabbi Yehuda, among the 3 who said that this was forbidden, okay, which seems to imply, we said, that he does not accept the idea of Brera, and if he rejects the idea of Brera, this supports, okay, Ayo's version of the text and not our Mishnah. Okay, so now we go on, and this is what we see. Ula Amar. So Ola disagrees. Leita la'ayu matnitin. He disagrees, and he says Ayu's version is not our Mishnah. It's not the valid version. Ve'elaha. But rather, this is the situation. Katani Rabbi Yehuda. Right? But rather that he said Rabbi Yehuda, excuse me, goes along earlier. Okay? V'Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Shimon Osri. And it's that just the two, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, that the two of them say it's forbidden. Ola, right? So Ula, how is he teaching it? Zuze Katani, by pairs, okay? Namely that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda hold one thing, and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon hold the other. Okay? Divrei Rabbi Meir v'Rabbi Yehuda is one statement. Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Shimon osrin. And it's the two of them that forbid it. Okay? Now, v'sava Rabbi Yossi. So now we get to I wouldn't say a new concept, but we get further involved because we're still dealing with the concept of Brera. But here, if we've sort of at least answered what Rabbi Yehuda's position is, we now have to deal with Rabbi Yossi's position, right? V'sava Rabbi Yossi ein Brera. Does Rabbi Yossi then hold that there's no concept of Brera? V'hatnan. But aren't we taught again elsewhere in a Mishnah? Rabbi Yossi Omer, Shtei Nashim, Shalakhu et Kinehen Be'eruv. That you have these two women, and they purchased their kinin, they purchased the nests, okay, which we really mean here is that what they are doing, okay, is that basically they're purchasing birds for pigeons in this case, for sacrifices. And they did it be'eruv, and they did it jointly. O shenatnu kinehem lekohen, or the two women gave their nests, in other words, they gave the birds as sacrifices for the Kohen. Either the women had given birth, or the women had been zavot, or whatever reason. Okay, so the text continues. Ezehu sheyirtzeh Kohen yakriv olah, ula eze sheyirtzeh yakriv chatat. Whichever then one the Kohen chooses, he can offer as an olah, whichever the Kohen chooses. In other words, the women did not pre-designate the birds. He can offer as a chatat. Now, if that's the case, okay, in other words, that would seem to imply what we're going to see in a moment, that if that's Rabbi Yossi's statement, in other words, it is brera, it is a post facto, so to speak, designation, or what we again might call retroactive, that these sacrifices, having been designated by the Kohen rather than the women, will still be applicable to cover what these women need, which would seem to imply that Rabbi Yossi does hold from Brera. Okay? Amar Rava, says Rava, Hatam Keshehitnu. Rava's explanation is, no, what happened is there, the women made a condition. Okay, in other words, they made a stipulation in advance when they told the Kohen which bird is to be done for which. Ihachi, says the Gemara, as we continue. Ma'ila memra. Okay, if that's the case, says the Gemara, why was it necessary to go into all this detail to say what we did? Kamash malan kiderav chista comes to teach us according to Rav Chista's view, right? Namely, the Amar Rav Chista ein hakinim mit parshot, says Rav Chista, these pigeons, all right, or the nests of the pigeons, really, but the birds cannot be designated, all right, clearly as an olah or a chatas, ela I b'lekichat ba'alim, unless it's done at the time of purchase by the owners, I ba'asiyat kohen, or it's done through the time of the kohen offering the animals. So, however, okay, what do we see here? Right? Va'akati, says the Gemara, and still, Savar Rabbi Yossi ein brera. Okay? Do we therefore see that in this first Braita, okay, do we say then that still Rabbi Yossi does not accept the concept of brera? Okay, right? Right. So what we're trying to see is we're going to try to bring another proof whether Rabbi Yossi accepts brera or not. V'hatanya. So let's bring another Braita, okay, and see the following. Am haaretz she'amar lechaver. Okay, this Braita is telling us that if a common person says to a chaver, and remember chaver was the not necessarily a sage, a chazal, but was an individual who was more stringent in terms of observing trumot and masrot, right? So the common person says, kachli aguda achat shel yerek, okay? And he tells him that you can buy for me a bundle of vegetables, o gluska achat, or buy me one loaf of bread. Eino tzarich la'aser divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says in this case, one doesn't have to take a tithe. V'chachamim omrim tzrich la'aser. And the sages say, no, he does have to take a tithe. So if this is the Braita, the Gemara's response is ipuch. Reverse the positions if you're trying to say that Rabbi Yossi doesn't accept brera. Let's try again, says the Gemara. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Okay? Ha'omer ma'aser sheyesh li b'beiti yechulal al sela sheta'aleh biyadi min hakis. Who says a situation where the person says this tithe, okay, that I have in my home will become deconsecrated. In other words, will be redeemed and deconsecrated based on this coin that I have here in my purse, so to speak, in my wallet, my bag, right? Rabbi Yossi Omer Mechulal. Rabbi Yossi says, according to this Braita also, that it becomes deconsecrated. Okay. Well, if we're saying, again, that would seem to say that he does accept brera. Epoch, reverse it, okay? Then we would have the position that Rabbi Yossi doesn't accept brera like we saw earlier. So the Gemara now says, hold on a second. Ema, Rabbi Yossi Omer lo chilel. I would say, therefore, that one should say that Rabbi Yossi says it does not become deconsecrated. Umay chazit ipacht, and what was the reason, so to speak, okay, that you said that one should reverse the braitas, okay? In other words, both braitas, we said we had to flip in order to get the position of Rabbi Yossi to be against Brera. So the Gemara says, why did you do that? Tarte mikame chada. Okay, you have two there instead of one, the two braitas versus the one Mishnah. Ipuch chada mikame tarte. Maybe instead I have to reverse the one Mishnah in the place of the two braitas. So the Gemara continues. Ha vadai ipchatanya. Here, however, it's clear, it's certain that one had to reverse it and teach it that way. The Katani Seifa, because afterwards, later at the end, Umode Rabbi Yossi, Ba'omer Ma'aser Sheyesh Li B'toch Beiti, Yeh Mechulal, Al Sela Chadasha Sheta'aleh Biyadim Menakis. Why? Because the later part of that Braita says clearly that Rabbi Yossi is in agreement, okay? That when one says, this tithe that I have at home will become deconsecrated on this new coin that I take out of my bag, shechilel, that it becomes deconsecrated. Midika amar hacha shechilel. Since in this Braita it's very clear that it becomes deconsecrated, and therefore the Rabbi Yossi is accepting Brera, miklal dahatam lo chilel, and therefore it has to be from inference that there, in the other case, it's not consecrated. Okay? So the reverse Braita, okay, over the Mishnah, right? Hai sela chadasha hechidami. But when he says specifically a new coin, what is he talking about? Ida ikatarte. Excuse me. If he has multiple coins, 2 or 3 tarte tlat, right? The yesh brera. And therefore, that's the reason that we can say that he holds brera. Hainu kamaita. Okay, then that would be just like the first case, right? Ela deleka elechada, but rather he only has one coin. So if that's the case, why did the language in the Braita say ta'aleh, mai ta'aleh, when I bring it up out of my purse, out of my, right? Aide de tani resha ta'aleh, excuse me, tana sefer nami ta'aleh. It's a stylistic issue. Since at the beginning of the text it raised ta'aleh, so at the end of the text. Just take a quick drink. Okay. All right. Now, it's a good point here that we sort of continue with the same theme, but we move on to a different discussion. Okay? Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava then says to Rav Nachman, Man hai Tana, who is this Tana? Da'afilu b'darabanan lit le brera. That even according to the rabbis, he doesn't accept the concept of brera. Right? The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Amar lechamisha, okay, that if he said to, let's say, 5 different people, Hareini ma'arev al ezemikem she'erzeh, that I'm going to make an eruv for whichever one of you that I choose. Ratziti, yelech, if I want, that person then can go beyond his tchum. Lo ratziti, if I don't want it, lo yelech, then that person cannot go beyond his tchum. Ratzami ba'od yom, if I want and make it while it's still Friday afternoon, right, while it's still daytime, eruvo eruv, then it is a valid eruv. Mishecha shecha, if I make it at nightfall, ein eruvo eruv, then it's not a valid eruv. Ishtik v'lo amarle v'lo mideh. Rav Nachman was silent, and he didn't respond at all. V'lei malei, so let him say to Rava the following: Tana debe ayohu. So why doesn't he say that perhaps whoever the Tana was, he was from the Academy of Ayo, okay, who basically did not accept the view of Brera. Lo shami'ale. Maybe he didn't learn it. Okay? Now, Rav Yosef Amar Tana'ai Shakalt Ma'alma. Have you, Rav Yosef challenged it and says, all the Tanaim in the world you've dismissed? Okay? Tana'ai. This actually is a machloket Tanaim. The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, excuse me, Hareini me'arev l'shabbatot shall kol hashana, that if I am to make an eruv for all the Sabbaths throughout the year, ratziti elech, if I choose, I can go beyond my tchum. Lo ratziti lo elech, if I don't choose, I cannot go beyond my tchum. Ratzeh mi ba'od yom eruvo eruv, if I choose and make it during the day, it is a valid eruv. Mishecha shecha, however, if I do it at nightfall, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says eruvo eruv, that it's a valid eruv. V'chachamim omrim ein eruvo eruv, but the sages say it's not a valid eruv. V'hashma'inem l'Rabbi Shimon delete le brera. But here haven't we learned, okay, that Rabbi Shimon holds that he doesn't accept the concept of brera. Kasha, the Rabbi Shimon are the Rabbi Shimon. If that's the case, then we have a problem, okay, with regards to Rabbi Shimon, okay, versus Rabbi Shimon, right? Ela ipuch, but rather reverse it, says the Gemara. My kasha. So the question then is, why do we say let's reverse it? How is that going to, don't we still have a problem? Dilma kilit le Rabbi Shimon brera b'deoraita, aval b'derabanan itle. Is it possible, asks the Gemara, that Rabbi Shimon could hold brera in regards to Torah mandated items, but in regards to rabbinic items, he wouldn't hold it? Kasava Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef therefore must be of the opinion and must maintain the view, man de itle brera lo shna b'doraita, lo shna b'derabanan itle. That whoever holds brera, it doesn't matter whether it's Torah mandated law or rabbinic mandated law, he holds to brera. Okay? Uman delib le brera, and one who does not hold brera, right? Lo shna b'doraita, lo shna b'dorabanan, litle. Okay, and it doesn't matter if he doesn't hold brera, it doesn't matter if it's a Torah mandated or if it's rabbinically mandated law, he does not then accept the concept of brera. Now, Rava Amar. Rava wants to give a different explanation. Shani Hatam. It's different there, he says, in regarding the issue of Eruv. Right? The Ba'inan Reshit Shiareha Nikari. Because, says Rava, we have something where we require that the first, in other words, the Truma, okay, are distinguishable. Right? That's what we mean by first. That the Truma, okay, Amarle Abaye. So Abaye challenges him and says, Elame Ata. But from here then, okay, what happens? Hayu lefanav shnei rimonim shel teva. Let's say he has in front of him two, right, pomegranates, right, and both of them are tevel. Va'amar im yardu gshamim hayom, and he says, if it rains today, right, yehei zeh truma al zeh, that this one will be a truma on the other. Okay? Ve'im lo yardu gshamim hayom, and if it doesn't rain today, right, yehei zeh truma al zeh, then this one will be a truma on that one. Right? Hachanami, here too, he says, making the comparison. Bein yardu, bein lo yardu, the ein b'dvarav klum. Are we saying whether it doesn't rain or it rains that he said nothing? V'chitema hachanami, and if you're going to say, right, that indeed that's the case, that his statement of declaration was not viable, v'hatnan, isn't it taught elsewhere in a Mishnah? Trumata keri hazeh ume'asrotav bitocho. If, says the Mishnah, if we have a pile, okay, of produce, right, and we say that this, in this pile of produce is included in the pile what is to be designated as truma and maaser. Okay, utrumat maaser ze b'tocho. Right. We say therefore that this trumat maaser is designated in its midst. Utrumat maaser ze b'tocho. All right, we said that, right? It's in its midst. Rabbi Shimon Omer Kara Hashem. Rabbi Shimon says he has designated the name, okay, which means he has rightfully called it as a valid tithe. Okay. So the Gemara responds, however, Shani Hatam De'ika Svivav. That's different because in this pile, you've designated a section of Trumas Maaser, and thus, yes, you may fulfill the issue of Shashireha Nikarnin, Reshit Shashireha Nikarnin, that the first, the Truma, be recognized, and the rest, okay, is not. Right? But that's why it's different, as opposed to simply the two pomegranates. V'bayat ema, and if you want, okay, we could explain it the following way. Ki dekatani ta'ama, as was taught, excuse me, by the reason at the end of the Braita. Amrula the Rabbi Meir, they said to Rabbi Meir, excuse me, Iyatamodeh, Shema Yivaka Hanud, V'nimtza Zeh Shoteh Tvalin Lemafreya. In another situation, right? Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Meir, okay, aren't you concerned, okay, if somebody has a flask, that the flask is going to crack, okay, and therefore what's going to happen is he's going to result in drinking liquid from the flask that has, okay, as in our case earlier, okay, where the person bought the wine from the kutim, that maybe the flask is going to break before he designates his truma and maser rishon and maser sheni, and therefore he will be drinking tevel after the fact. In other words, that situation. Amar lehen l'kshe yivakeh. Says Rabbi Meir, you know what? I'll decide on it if it happens. Okay? That's the case. If and when it splits. Lamai desalik ada'atan me'ikara. Okay? So the Gemara then says, okay, according to what originally entered our thoughts, entered our minds, the ba'inan reshit shi'areha nikarim, where we said that we require that the first amount, the truma, be recognized separately. Ma'ika amrele. Then what is it possible that they could have said to him? Hachi ka'amrele. This is what they could have said to him, to Rabbi Meir. Lididan ba'inan reshit shireha nikarin. According to us, we say we require that the first items, namely the first truma, has to be recognized, and you have to have additional left over. L'didach, according to you, says Rabbi Meir, I atam modeh, don't you acknowledge, shema yivaka hanud v'nimtza shotet l'valin l'mafreya, that perhaps the flask, okay, may split open, and the person then will result in drinking tevel, right, retroactively. Amar lehem l'kshe yivaka. And Rabbi Meir's response was, when it splits, that's when I'll worry. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop for today. Okay, guys?
Yeah, sure.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Hey, thank you.
Everything okay with Harvey?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, everybody. Stay
Thank-
well and take care,
You too.
and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Go have a hot tea.
All right?
Go have a hot tea
Yeah.
for your throat.